Hello, everyone. This is Glaucia Silva. I'm a PhD student in Systematics and Evolution from the Department of Botany and Zoology at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte. Today, I would love to talk to you about one of my favorite education works that I call the Taylor Swift Method for Botany Teaching. How many times I listened to this sentence, I hate botany, from colleagues, from friends, from many of my students. I used to get sad when I listened to their negative feelings towards plants, but with time, I started to try to understand what's behind this word hate. But the question is, has botany always been hated? The answer is no. We can see many plants depicted in many paintings as the art movement, Impressionism by Claude Monet, Renoir, Van Gogh, and many other artists. We can see how important plants were for many emperors and kings centuries ago. In ancient Greece, many philosophers, they were also doctors and botanists because they used the plant knowledge to treat diseases. So at that time, the botanical knowledge were considered fancy and something from the high society. So another question is, what happened that botany came from a science that was loved to a science that is rejected? So I asked my students what they think about botany, and this is what I got. That botany is boring and useless. That the teacher puts a lot of text on the board. They see no connections with their lives. The botany has many hard names. The teacher does not like plants. So as you can see, your student feels when you're not attracted and when you have no passion about that subject. Also, no attractive activities. This takes us to the biggest challenge of botany, in my opinion, that is our relationship with plants that is the meshed. What can explain this relationship is the plant awareness disparity, also known as plant blindness, plant imperception. It's the human inability to notice plants in the environment, recognize their specific aesthetic traits, and people fail to recognize their importance to the biosphere, often claiming that plants are less important than animals. But what are wider causes of plant awareness disparity? Many authors they will say that it's multifactorial. Screen time, modern lifestyles, this desire for speed, they probably cause this distance between people and plants. But also, some authors will say that in our childhood, the fact that we are always exposed to animations, movies related to animals could shape our cognitive structure to look more to the animals than the plants. Ask yourself, when you were a kid, what would you ask as a birthday gift? A pet or a plant? I would ask for a dog and for rabbits. But who loses with plant awareness disparity? Science and education. In their undervaluation in scientific research and conservation efforts, we'll have less funding, less people pursuing botanical careers, and poor curriculums in education. For an example, here in Brazil, we had, for example, if you look up the didactical book in high schools, they will have 5 to 15 pages to talk about zoology. But for botany, they have what? One page. So this disparity contributes to habitat destruction, reduced biodiversity, and weakened ecosystem stability. Also, nature and society will lose because it will make poor decision making in environmental policy. We'll have less laws to protect our species, less reserves, and a lack of good urban planning. Since plants they are fundamental to ecological processes, neglecting them can intensify environmental challenges, including climate change and reduce food quality. This lack of awareness limits the public, the society understanding of how important the plants are and the role they play in human health, in our economies, in our culture, including their importance to medicine, agriculture, and climate regulation. Neglecting plant life undermines sustainable development and will threaten long-term social and economic stability. So everyone loses with plant awareness disparity. How to overcome it in educational spaces with a stagnant botany teaching. I had a plus because this work was created in the middle of the pandemics. We were facing a mortal virus with a very unstable calendar. The university calendar did match with the high school calendar. We had time reduced in classroom with the students. We were constantly tired with anxiety, overload, full of work. Consequently, in the beginning, I had 120 students, and with all of the circumstances, half of them gave up on their 2021 scholar year because also many of them were stuck at home taking care of sick family members. Many of them were sick themselves. Also, many of the students they didn't have adequate equipments to watch the remote classes as tablets or computers. Also, many of them didn't also have internet access. For those who remained, we had a syllabus to follow to continue our classes. Here, I'm gonna tell you guys that I had two risky decisions. The book told us that we should start with bryophytes and go to gymnos angiosperms, this classic pathway through plant evolution. But since I noticed that my students they had many complaints and negative feelings towards botany, I decided to include a plant awareness disparity class to bring to the surface the possible reasons that they not notice plants in the environment so they could see this problematic. Another risky decision that I made was selecting music videos to introduce this subject. Everything started when I remembered that Taylor released Folklore, and the main track, Cardigan, has an MV filled with visual clues of mosses and ferns. And I thought, what if I use this to introduce the subjects I'm about to teach? What if Taylor has more music videos that can fit and match my teaching aims? So for this, I selected four MVs. They're not randomly selected because it's a mandatory step. They need to fit the botanical subject that you're about to teach. Because it doesn't gonna make sense if you have a visual clues of mosses to present for gymnosperms class. There is thematic coherence. The singer that you're gonna choose, in my case, Taylor, needs to be the songwriter or the co-writer because it's important to note that the botany terms and elements is coming from her. There is music, for example, in her Christmas EP that she's the performer, she sings, but she was not the songwriter. So these songs they were discarded from the method, and I just keep the ones that she's absolutely the writer or co-writer. So I sent the MV 1 week before class as the homework for remote settings, but you can watch it in person before the learning event for in-person configurations. Here, the music videos, they will work as advanced organizers. It's any kind of material that is able to introduce a given subject in a simple, effective, and abstract way, connecting the previous knowledge and what the student will learn in class. And once they this knowledge, they will bind, be interconnected, and learning will take place in a meaningful way. So your students, they will be able to learn even more complex botanical subjects. So they will need to watch, pay attention, and take notes. This method is easy, it's free, simple, fast, practical, and accessible. We had discussions up to 30 minutes to see which kind of botanical elements they saw in her music videos. Each MV has a specific prompting questions to let the students in the debate. But it's important to note that you will need to be attentive because many times they will ask unplanned questions. Then you will need to go back to botany focus that topics. Why Taylor Swift? Everyone makes this question. Well, I like her. I use this to show people that it's nice and we can extract things with scientific observations from things that we like. She's a reference of the current generation. Universities around the globe, like Harvard, Yale, Melbourne University, Oxford, they study her impact in culture and society. Taylor has a high ability in writing and melody. She's an inspiration and she promotes connectivity between people. Pursuing a strong emotional and social bond with people. What was one thing that we missed the most during pandemics? Bond with people, connection. So I saw that 32.2% of her songs reference botanical elements, 78 out of more than 200 musics. Also, I saw that 87% of her music videos have botanical imagery, 53. Also, observation, listening, and debate can improve learning. And I did a kind of a student profile to try to understand which kind of students I was dealing with. I had the Swiftie. This one likes Taylor, but doesn't like botany. He will be okay with the method because of her, not because of the plant. The plant lover, he likes botany, but he doesn't like botany. He doesn't like Taylor. He will be up to the method because of the plants and not because of her. The botanical Swiftie, this one will be in the paradise because he likes botany and likes Taylor. Not everything or flowers. So I also have the hater. It's basically the the biggest amount of students that I ever had. It's the one that doesn't like botany and doesn't like Taylor. This one will be suspicious, will be a little bit resistant with the method, but with some talk and some empathy, they will understand that they don't need to like her to be a part of the method. They don't need her to feel connected to the plants. So with time, they will be up to the method. For the first class, before 1 week before our first class, I sent them link space, the music video link on YouTube, with the command of you just need to watch, listen, pay attention, and take notes if you feel so. And when the class started, in the first 20 minutes, I asked them, how was the Taylor Swift music videos? What did you think? And he started talking about her dress, narrative, subjects, her appearance. They talked about her hair, the partner, the mansion, the fancy car, their earrings. But they will not talk about the plants. Taylor even holds an apple and she manipulates the apple, but they will not see it. There is a huge garden with many shrubs and trees. There is a tree that we can identify to family level, Myrtaceae, and they will not see it. In this part, Taylor is at the table and she will interact with some botanical elements. There is Sicilian lemon, pineapples, red roses, bananas, cucumber. They will not see it. Blank Space is one of her most rich music videos regarding botany. But this is okay, this is normal. Plant perception is a skill that we develop with time and practice. So I understand that they didn't see it. But when I started showing them, here's the shrubs, here's the tree, here's a pineapple, there is a banana, there is a cucumber, they were like, oh my God, we didn't see it. And it was always there. So this was a learning opportunity. Why you guys didn't see the botanical elements? So here I started talking about plant awareness disparity and its consequences for society. Before, in the end of the plant awareness disparity class, for the next class, one more video. You guys will watch Cardigan, another MV by Taylor. And they asked me, is this our homework only just to watch the video? Yes, you have 1 week to watch a single music video. And when our class started, how was the music video? They talked about her dress, her hair, the house that was falling apart. They talked about the piano, the time she spent floating in the water. They will say that she was at the forest. But the thing is, they not gonna say the details of this forest setting. She's gonna spend almost 2 minutes playing piano in this forest. They will not tell about the trees, the large stems, the ferns surrounding her, the moss attached to her piano, the pteridophytes on the piano. They're not going to talk about the water coming out from the piano. They will focus on aesthetics, traits, and narrative elements. And then I start the class about bryophytes and pteridophytes, life cycle, reproduction, main groups, uses, importance, uh, how they need humid environments to reproduce. They're gonna start recognizing that we are talking about the same elements that they saw in music video. Oh, is this the same thing that is glued on her piano? Yes. So they will start to connect what we are seeing, class, with the imagery of her music videos. And this is what's gonna make the learning taking place in a meaningful way because it will shape their cognitive structure to connect what they saw with what they are learning now. For the next class, another video. Out of the woods. It's important to mention that my students, they didn't know the next subject. They just had the information. Watch this music video. Next class, we're gonna talk. And then I asked, how was Out of the Woods? What did you think? For the first time, this is my favorite class actually. For the first time, they're gonna bring botanical specific elements. For they will place Taylor. They will put her on the side. They will say, teacher, there is large trees, huge stems. There is slow sunlight. Is this a forest? It's a cold forest. There is a lot of leaves on the floor. Is this a root? Is this there is snow? Oh my God, Taylor Fall. What was that? A root or a climbing tree? The botanical elements they will start to show up. They will talk about her dress, but just in the end. So here, I made a very interesting prompting question, the most important prompting question for this class. They are used for of me asking, what did you see? What do you notice? Uh, but for the first time, I'm gonna ask the oppositive. After they told me everything about the forest, I asked, what is missing? Their heads were like blowing. And I started thinking about it until one of my students opened the microphone and said, there is no flowers. I don't see any flower. Another student, no fruits too. So what do you think, guys? There's going to be our class today. Plants without flowers and fruits, they answered. How do we call them? They said gymnosperms. So they built the concept of gymnosperms in a very simple way, but effective. And they started to talk about botanical terms more naturally. For the next class, I asked them to watch Willow music video with another command. Here, they will also read a translated piece of the lyrics. Why? Taylor is gonna talk about ecological things of the willow tree. She will compare herself with the tree with some characteristics, and also to conduct a brief independent investigation into willow. So they realized that we were talking about angiosperms because they saw flowers. And when I asked, what did you think about willow? Taylor comes out from a huge tree. There is many leaves on the ground. This tree is near a lake. Why is she walking down the tree? Oh, she's touching the stem. The stem seems to be rigid. So the more botanical elements they were coming. They were into the method already. After that, they started asking me for tailored music videos for each of one of our classes. The outcomes, the students, they showed more interest and openness to talk about plant morphology. I used this as an icebreaker to make them feel more comfortable with botany, with plants, with environment, and with me too. We were living a period of uncertainty. We were suffering, and I tried somehow to give a more pleasurable experience, more funny to my students, something something to breathe. And now I'm going to give you some examples of how we can use musics of Taylor in classes. This music, The Great War, is from the Midnight's album, 3 a.m. version. And she's going to say, my knuckles were bruised like violets, all the bloodshed, crimson clover. We can plant a memory garden, say a solemn prayer, place a poppy in my hair. There's no morning glory, it was war, it wasn't fair. You have 30 seconds to guess how could we use this music in angiosperms class? We can use taxonomy. You can ask your students to identify which plants she's talking about on her music. This song also has a war context. So we are also talking about the story of botany. So first of all, she's going to talk about violets. When she say there is her knuckles were bruised like violets, she's talking about the delicacy of the violet's petals because they can be damaged with such touch. She talks about the crimson clover. Imagine that in a war scenario, she has a field full of crimson. After a bloodbath, people dying and that blood all over that field will become, and dark crimsons will become crimson clovers, red. She's talking about the poppy. This is a very important historical flower that in UK they use this. You can see many football soccer players using as on their clothes as a remembrance day to honor soldiers that they died in combat. Also, the morning glory, this flower represents rebirth or starting again. Another example, a very known music, blank space. Cherry lips, rose garden, filled with thorns. Here, it's the first and unique moment that we're gonna make an observation about something that Taylor said. We know that the rose family does not have thorns, but prickles or aculeus. So here, she's clearly making an adaptation of the scientific nomenclature so people will understand it better. So we have the rose family, the cherry. Another example. Once I was poison ivy, now I am your daisy. She's comparing a toxic plant with a non-toxic plant. Carnations you had thought were roses. She brings the carnations, comparing with roses, to imply that the person she was talking about thought she was a thing and she was another, that it was flowers with some kind of similarity, morphologically speaking. In my heart is a Christmas tree farm, holly and ribbon, under the mistletoe. I brought one of the most relevant genus of Christmas tree, but there is other families and other genus that can also be used as Christmas trees. As the holly, she brings the mistletoe. As you can see, there is a lot of richness of botanical elements in her music depicted in her music videos. She repeats many of them, for example, red roses, but in most part of the time, she's very diversified. And this is very good thinking about botany teaching. I brought some examples of her other music videos. There is many music videos that you can use as advanced organizers. Or song, she brings many varieties and kinds of roses. Safe and sound you can use to gymnosperms. For example, she's gonna walk around this forest without flowers and fruits. Lavender haze, she brings a field full of lavender and other plants. I love this music video. Its setting is in Africa, so it's really beautiful to work different environments. And I love these plants. Really, really cool. So as you can notice, we worked without even mentioning the name, but we named some species. We classified the plants that she brought. We talked about taxonomy when we talked from bryophytes to angiosperms. It's a classic pathway through plant evolution. We talked about economic botany. We know roses, there are flowers that are used in important dates, as Valentine's Day, for example. History of botany, the poppy that is a historical flower. We talked about plants and society, or relationship, and the importance of plants to our to our days. We talked about art right before in the impressionist movements and in others too. Biogeography and ecology, because the students they brought many questions about light, about snow, and then I didn't had the intention to use ecology subjects in this method. But since the students they brought to the surface some questions, I decided to add in the end. Before closing the Taylor Swift garden, what we noticed in changes in our students, more interaction and openness, curiously talking to them, they told me that many of them never interacted with each other before the method. We had also a positive student teacher relationship because they also started updating me on their plans. We had a moment of talk after the class that we were talking about their plans. Professor, this is happening to my flower. My passion fruit it's not giving fruit. What is happening? What's going on? So I use it to use the whole class to talk on what do you guys think that can be happening with this passion fruit? Are you watering correctly? Are you doing this? Are you is in the shadow? Is in the shade or high sun exposure? So together we try to solve the mysteries they were bringing to us about their own plants, their own gardens. So this made our classes more dynamic and enjoyable, more fun. They started having more naturality with botanical terms, and they stopped a lot of their complaints when they were talking about, oh, this ovary is like this, but the anthers, but the stigma. And I was like, oh, but you say it was hard names. And they didn't even realize that we were speaking naturally. So they started having more perception and association with plants and their lives. This last one was not my main goal, but it's something that Brazilian schools and universities they require from us. But yes, they show it better academic performance in botanical tests. The best feedback comes from students who do not like Taylor Swift. This is fantastic for me because they don't have the lens of love for her. They will see the method right through it, the raw part of the method. They will see that this is not just us having a delusion and talking about Taylor Swift. They will see that this is about the plants that she depicts in her art. And we are using this scenario, this material to improve our plant skills, plant perception skills. Many students tell me this. I still don't like her, and it's fine. It's not the goal of the method to create an army of Swifties. This is not our objective. But I understand your point. You wanted us to see the plants. Now I can't unsee them. And this is my main goal. I don't want my students to get out of my classes loving botany, but recognizing them as something important to their lives, that the plants, they are everywhere, in everything. And they started saying, there is this plant in the way to the bakery. There is this plant that my grandmother is growing. So is this is what I want. I do not hate botany anymore. There was never hate. They simply didn't notice them or paid attention. Plant awareness disparity treatment does not depend on educational spaces only. Education is one pathway. Plant awareness disparity may be overcome once we recognize our space as living, making relationship the relation between the nature and the students. After all, we believe in what makes sense to us. Because in the end, this is not about Taylor Swift. This is about the plants, the botanical imagery, the botanical lyricism that she impregnates in her art. And we use these elements to help people overcome their plant rejection and their plant awareness disparity to connect these people to the natural world. I thank all the agencies that helped me through my career. If you want more details, please check our recently published article of the Taylor method at Annals of Botany. And please, if you have any doubt, suggestion, please contact me anytime. And I thank you very much for watching this class. See you next time. Have a nice day.